welcome Steve Melewski from MASNsports.com to join us here on the Mid-Atlantic Sports Report. And Steve, your thoughts on why it's taking so long to ink Gallardo?
It's interesting, Tom. I wish I had that answer, but I have to say, since we have not heard of any holdup, we have not read of any holdup, no one has reported anything of the sort, that it just could be, as Dan Duquette has been quoted as saying a few times, these things take time. The normal course of business, the back and forth they're going over. I mean, maybe a late team or teams has entered into this sweepstakes. There could be unknowns we don't know about. But everything that I've seen, heard, read, and discussed with people is that it's still headed towards an agreement. But until it's done, obviously it's not done.
What about outfielder Dexter Fowler? Are the Orioles in on that? Is that something they're going to get done before spring training?
I mean, I like that as a 1-2 punch, Mel. I mean, I think at 363 career on base will play really well with the Orioles. And, I mean, he fills three needs: corner outfield, leadoff hitter, switch hitter. Let's throw that in there, too. A little bit of speed. I mean, he probably fills 4 or 5 needs. You know, when you talk about a guy who can hit left-handed, he's a switch hitter, a guy who can hit at the top of the order, and a guy who's got on base. I mean, these are things the Orioles have been looking for in recent years, not finding the perfect fit when they've had to hit players like Markakis and Machado lead off, who thrived in the role, but that's not where you would generally put them into a lineup. And here's a guy who is a leadoff hitter.
Steve, it looks like the Orioles are going to get this done because it doesn't seem to be anybody interested as far as the Gallardo move. But if, in fact, that doesn't happen, what type of pitcher out there still do you see them possibly looking to ink to a contract before spring training starts, or, for that matter, as we know, within the first week or so of spring training?
David, unless there's a trade possibility, and who knows, maybe there is, if the Orioles don't get Gallardo and Latos is off the board and so many pitchers are off the board now, they may just go back to Plan B, which was Plan A before they got close with Gallardo, it seemed to me, which was all these fifth starter candidates that are out there, from Vance Worley on down to the player they acquired from the Padres, and Wright and Wilson and Mattis and a whole host of potential fifth starter candidates that are there if they don't have a pitcher who they feel is better than that group.
Now, Steve, you cover the minor leagues very well and do an excellent job on MASNsports.com. I wanted to ask you this. Recently, Chris Davis, with a K, traded by Milwaukee to the Oakland A's for a couple of minor leaguers. Corey Dickerson, traded by Colorado to the Tampa Bay Rays for Jake McGee as part of a package deal. Does it appear to you that maybe the Orioles do not have enough in the minor leagues to attract teams to make a deal for similar to one of those two deals?
Now, that's probably beginning to be true. I mean, as we know, the Orioles traded several young pitchers they liked over the last few years to get current major league talent, and that's a reversal of what we saw the Orioles do for many years. When they were a losing team, they were trying to add young talent. When they became a winning, contending team, win-now mode, you're trying to add to your major league roster to beef up for the second half and the postseason. So it's kind of a different mode than we've seen them be in, but I've written this, and I think it's fair to say that the Orioles are in a go-for-it-all, win-now mode, but they also are set up to trade off players if it flames out. Even if they add these two players we were talking about, and in July they're just a disaster. They're in last place. They're going nowhere. They're underperforming. There could be a fire sale, which replenishes the farm. Or that fire sale could happen in 2017, or it could happen in 2018. The fact is they have a good core of talent under team control, as they say, for the next 2 or 3 years to make a run. And I think they have that fallback option of if a worst-case scenario develops, they can trade off some people.
What's the highest percentage of things that could happen here? Both players get signed, Fowler and Gallardo, or one or the other? And if it's one or the other, who is the priority? Who would make the Orioles a better team if you could only sign one?
I still go with the pitcher, Mel. I know how attractive a leadoff hitter and the on-base would be, but I just don't think their rotation is quite where they need it to be. And Gallardo's been nitpicked by fans on my blog, and some of them are very justified. And yes, that his K rate has shrunk, his velocity dropped a little bit. He did have a bad second half, but you're looking at 7 straight years of 180 innings, and an ERA last year that was 11th among American League starters. And I know he didn't get there with a K ratio of 9/9. He didn't blow everybody away, but he has good ground ball numbers, and he would be pitching behind one of the best defensive infields in this sport. And he's limited home runs, even in a hitter's park like Texas. So while we can nitpick Gallardo, and sure there's reason to wonder how well he'll do moving forward, there's also some things on his resume to like.
See, when you look at Mark Trumbo's situation, you know, if they get Fowler, obviously that puts Trumbo in more of a DH-only situation, and that probably knocks maybe Paredes out of the situation. Of course, there's been talk about Alvarez. Have you heard any more about Alvarez at all, and is that kind of still hinging on the fact of whether they can actually get something done with Fowler?
You know, he's kind of been on the back burner, Dave, which is interesting. There hasn't been a lot of pumping up of Alvarez. I think the organization remains high on him, but I think they still see, hey, the guy's a bit of a free swinger, and we need some plate discipline things to come. And he ran some erratic routes in the outfield in a very small sample last year, because in Norfolk he didn't do that. He was a solid defender with a tremendous arm. So I think they like having him waiting in the wings, make him force his way on the team, make Trey Mancini at one point force his way on the team. I mean, this is the way it used to happen with the Orioles. Guys like Bobby Grich and Don Baylor had to tear it up at AAA for a couple hundred games before they got a shot. And you love to have quality depth in the farm to say, okay, we're not starting Alvarez in right field opening day, but by June or July, maybe he plays his way into playing time. And that seems to me what they're saying to Alvarez right now.
Now, Steve, obviously you're talking about Dario Alvarez, but let's talk about Pedro Alvarez. He's also been mentioned recently. What would that do to the Orioles, and with Fowler possibly putting maybe Trumbo in right field and Pedro Alvarez as a DH? Could you foresee that happening?
I could, but I think it's less likely now, Tom, after Chris Davis re-signed. Before, that was a great option. You know, Trumbo at first, Alvarez as your DH, and you have 2 power hitters to help replace 47 home runs that you could have lost. But now they didn't lose that, and Davis, we're told, is mainly going to be the first baseman, and Trumbo, it appears, is mainly the DH, and he's making $9 million. I just don't think, I think Trumbo is going to get most of those at bats. So Alvarez is out there. Maybe there's a situation which the Orioles would go for it, but I would think they're looking at these other guys ahead of him.
One final thing. You said in your blog, I noticed about Gallardo, you mentioned that his left on base totals dropped from previous years, even though, you know, the strikeouts had gone down and the walks, whatever, you know, those numbers. But the left on base has changed. How important do you think that plays into the decision to bring Gallardo in?
I think that's a stat that I'm not sure how to read into it, but I know this. Gallardo last year was 77% left on base. That would have been the best of any Oriole pitcher. And look at how Chris Tillman struggled, and he was the worst, 68%. So there's a message in there that sometimes you're able to get these guys, get out of jams, and your ERA can be 3.4, and sometimes you can't, and your ERA is 4.8. And that this stat alone isn't the difference, but it's one thing to look at. And Gallardo, throughout his career, has been pretty good on base. Career rate last year as well. And Tillman, through most of his career, has been pretty good. And I think that helped Tillman pitch better 2012 through 14 than we saw in 2015. Again, it's not the only reason that stats fluctuate, but it's something to look at.
Well, Steve, as always, we appreciate the information, the conversation, and we'll be following you on MASNsports.com. I know you'll always do a great job there.